The moment the hearing began, the tension in the air was electric. The House Oversight Committee had already been under scrutiny for weeks, but when Representative Jasmine Crockett entered the room, calm and collected in a cobalt blue blazer, something shifted. Across from her sat Pam Bondi, former Florida Attorney General and current conservative firebrand, who had been invited by Republican members to testify as an expert witness on prosecutorial integrity. Bondi had been seated confidently, prepared, with folders of notes and that trademark smirk she often wielded when anticipating easy rhetorical victories. For the first 30 minutes, the exchange had been typical: partisan volleys, overly rehearsed statements, and feigned civility. But then the chair recognized Reps. Crockett, and without warning, the political theater turned into a rhetorical massacre. In what would become the most replayed 90 seconds of the year, Crockett leaned forward, eyes narrowed, and launched into a barrage so precise, so devastating, that the room fell into stunned silence by the end of it. Crockett began by asking Bondi to explain a memo she had written during her time as AG, one that reportedly dismissed concerns about donor influence over her office. When Bondi attempted to deflect, Crockett cut her off. "You mean to tell me, Ms. Bondi, that the $25,000 donation your office received from the Trump Foundation, just days before you declined to investigate Trump University, was purely coincidental?" she asked, voice steady and sharp. Bondi froze, blinked and reached for her notes, but Crockett continued. "Because I find it odd, and I think the American people do too, that your idea of prosecutorial integrity conveniently aligned with campaign contributions." Bondi's lips parted as if to speak, but Crockett pressed on. "And let's talk about your sudden pivot to political commentary after your term, leveraging the very legal authority you abused to get a national platform. You're not a legal expert. You're a case study in corruption." Gasps rippled through the hearing room. The C-SPAN live stream surged by thousands of viewers within seconds as word spread across social media. Jasmine Crockett wasn't just questioning Pam Bondi, she was dismantling her, one fact at a time. Bondi tried to respond, stumbling through an attempted rebuttal about partisan attacks, but Crockett wouldn't let her off the hook. "This isn't partisan, it's principled," she said, her voice rising just enough to command full attention. "And while you're lecturing us on legal ethics, Floridians are still asking why your office ignored dozens of fraud complaints." The Republican committee members shifted in their seats, sensing the blowback. Cameras zoomed in on Bondi's hands, now visibly trembling as she rifled through her notes. Crockett, meanwhile, wasn't done. She pulled up a projected slide of court filings Bondi's office had quietly dropped mid-investigation and read aloud a quote from one of the plaintiffs who said Bondi turned a blind eye to their pain in exchange for political favor. The silence in the room became suffocating. Bondi's expression collapsed from defiance to something closer to panic. She glanced around, perhaps hoping for intervention from an ally on the panel, but none came. Crockett had not just delivered a takedown, she had eviscerated the very idea of Bondi's credibility in public service. When Crockett's allotted time ended, the chair cleared his throat awkwardly, as if unsure how to continue. Bondi finally spoke, but her voice had lost all authority. "I categorically deny all accusations," she said, eyes not quite meeting anyone's gaze. The statement fell flat, and the hearing moved on, but everyone in the room understood they had just witnessed something seismic. Within minutes, clips of Crockett's questioning flooded TikTok, X formerly Twitter, and YouTube. The 90-second highlight reel was shared by progressives, moderates, even stunned independents who rarely engaged in political discourse. Curse Crockett clapback trended globally by nightfall. On cable news, the tone was unanimous. Pam Bondi had been absolutely dismantled in front of a national audience by a rising political powerhouse who did not miss a beat. What made Crockett's moment so electrifying wasn't just her command of facts. It was the clarity with which she exposed a system of selective accountability. "She pulled back the curtain," said one CNN analyst. "That wasn't just a political hit. It was an indictment of the way powerful people think they can move through public life untouched." The following day, Crockett appeared on multiple morning shows poised and unapologetic. "I didn't come here to play nice," she told MSNBC's Morning Joe. "I came here to ask the questions everyday people are tired of seeing ignored." Bondi, in contrast, declined all interview requests. A planned Fox News appearance was suddenly postponed due to scheduling conflicts. Her office later released a brief statement calling the hearing a circus, but it did little to reverse the public perception that she had been publicly outclassed and humiliated. Political strategists on both sides scrambled to recalibrate. Democrats hailed Crockett as the face of the new party, sharp, fearless, and unrelenting. Republicans, meanwhile, worried about the optics of a trusted figure like Bondi being so thoroughly discredited. "The base likes a fight," one GOP consultant admitted, "but not when their champions look like they lost one." Within 48 hours, donations poured into Crockett's re-election campaign from all 50 states. Her campaign staff said they'd never seen such a rapid financial spike. College students began remixing her lines into songs. Protesters outside the Capitol chanted, "She said what we were thinking." Crockett, meanwhile, remained focused. When asked if she had planned the takedown, she replied, "No, I just did my homework." What many hadn't realized before was how methodical Crockett had been. While Bondi had dismissed the hearing as a formality, Crockett had spent nights combing through archives, court records, and depositions. She even enlisted pro bono legal scholars to cross-reference timelines and campaign finance reports. Her approach wasn't theatrical, it was prosecutorial. And that, more than anything, is what stunned the room. This wasn't a viral moment born from outrage. It was the result of preparation, intellect, and timing. "If this is what the next generation of leadership looks like," said a columnist in The Atlantic, "then perhaps all isn't lost in American politics." The hearing, once expected to be a routine episode of partisan grandstanding, became a flashpoint moment, one that would be taught in political science classes for years. Meanwhile, Bondi's allies tried to do damage control. They circulated carefully worded op-eds alleging that Crockett had used selective context and weaponized rhetoric, but their efforts felt hollow. The video spoke for itself. And in an age where attention is currency, Bondi had been bankrupted. Calls for her to step down from various legal advisory boards intensified. One Florida university reportedly reconsidered her scheduled guest lecture. Conservative outlets tried to pivot the story, focusing instead on border security or inflation. But their audiences kept asking the same question. What happened to Pam? A moment that should have been a routine committee hearing had exposed not just one individual, but an entire network of accountability loopholes. As the weeks rolled on, the echo of that 90-second moment lingered. Late-night hosts reenacted the exchange. Editorial cartoons showed Bondi melting under Crockett's gaze. Even SNL opened with a parody sketch that, unusually, didn't exaggerate much. The reality had already been absurdly impactful. Behind closed doors, political insiders whispered about Crockett's future. Some saw her as a future speaker, others as a Senate contender. But Crockett remained grounded. In a radio interview, she said, "If holding people accountable makes headlines, then maybe we need to start asking why that's not the norm." And with that, she reminded everyone that her purpose wasn't personal vindication. It was systemic exposure. Ultimately, the hearing came to symbolize a broader generational shift. No longer were political elites safe from scrutiny simply because of titles or history. The public, weary from years of obfuscation and moral ambiguity, found catharsis in Crockett's clarity. For many Americans, that moment affirmed that truth could still pierce through noise. Bondi may have walked into the hearing expecting to score easy political points, but she walked out as a cautionary tale. And Jasmine Crockett, with just 90 seconds of undeniable truth, redefined the power of asking the right questions at the right time.